You're listening to the Be So Good podcast with Colin Pearce. Colin says you are 10 times better than you think. So why not be so good they can't ignore you? Here he is, Colin Pearce.
Roger Crawford has an entertaining and a remarkable, if not moving, story. He's a great tennis player, but more than that, he's a very famous and interesting speaker. He's been speaking to college audiences, to business audiences all over the United States for a long time. We're going to talk about his early life, one of his interesting and major setbacks, and we'll talk about how he got into the business of speaking and being such an influential fellow. So I'd like you to meet Roger Crawford. Roger?
Well, Colin, how are you? Nice to be with you. You didn't mention this, but you're a cherished friend of mine, and we've known each other for many, many years, and it's just a tremendous honor to join you today.
Well, that's beautiful. Our audience is growing, and you'll help them even more. Well, let's get right down to it, Roger. You started life in a very interesting manner. I think the surprise to your parents was something that will move everybody. So will you tell from the beginning, perhaps some mum and dad's story and into yours about how life began for you?
Sure. So I was born with a physical challenge, affects all four of my limbs from the elbows down and from the knees down. Now I'm almost 60 years of age, and when I was born, my parents had no indication whatsoever that their newborn child would have any difficulties. So it was quite a shock to them, as I'm sure you can imagine. My left leg was amputated when I was 5 years old, so I wear an artificial leg or prosthesis, and I have 3 toes on my right foot, partially developed lower right leg. So needless to say, this was a tremendous surprise for my mom and dad. But I will tell you, they handled it in such a beautiful way, and I'm so grateful to them. I can remember growing up, my father used to say this to me: you don't live in pity city. And his point was, be thankful for what you have. Focus on what you do have, not what you don't have. Have a positive attitude. Look for possibilities. Look for the opportunities, not the obstacles. And I heard that message over and over growing up, and it was just invaluable. It really shaped my entire life.
They must have been, are they still with you?
They are. Yes, my mom has Alzheimer's, and so she doesn't remember me anymore. But I got to tell you a precious story. My mom, a couple of years ago, she was going to a facility every day for people that had memory care issues, and she asked me if I would come and speak. And of course, I was thrilled to do so. And she sat in the front row, and there was a young lady next door. And after I was finished, this young lady raised her hand. She said, "Roger, I'm 99 years old, and I'm going to remember your speech for a long, long time." I thought, now that's a positive attitude. But
that's
my
gorgeous.
mom still has that great joyful spirit. So I'm sorry that she's enduring this health issue, but it's part of life. But
Yes.
so yes, they're still with me. And in the United States here, we're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving in a couple of days, and we'll be getting together, but social distancing, of course, because of COVID-19.
Now, Roger, this all took place in California, I think, didn't it? Or were you further to the east?
Actually, it was Cleveland, Ohio, which I know you lived in Ohio for a bit.
Yes,
yeah,
I've got the background up
Ohio.
of the Golden Gate Bridge, because it's as close to Sacramento as it could get, and you're well out of Sacramento too. And
yes, well, I really California is really my home and has been for 50 years. So I do consider myself a Californian, but this actually happened in Cleveland, Ohio.
I went to Cleveland with the family one day, and it was a lovely clear blue sky in the middle of January, and we were sailing, just streaming along, and got to Lake Erie.
Yes, Lake Erie, beautiful. It's beautiful. It's really a beautiful place.
Well, it looked fantastic. So we got out of the car and snap froze. Christine and Sarah's hair stood on end.
Oh, right.
And we just stood frozen there. What a very cold place, but very beautiful place. Your folks, the reason I mentioned them, your dad must have been a man with indomitable spirit and a huge heart of love to be able to take this little boy. And there wasn't a lot of hope for you physically, was there?
Well, you've got to remember this was a number of years ago. That's before the days of mainstreaming and inclusion. And so anybody who had a physical challenge like mine, I mean, it was a real oddity. You didn't see anybody in the media that had a physical challenge. So yeah, I mean, it was a tremendous challenge for them.
Yes.
My dad is tough-minded. And what I mean by that is he's all about determination, not making excuses, doing the best you can with what you have. And he really instilled that drive in me. And secondly, they communicated to me that everybody had challenges. It just so happened that mine was visible. And the reason that was so important, it was like an epiphany to me as a young person, because I started to see the world differently. Not that I was necessarily different, but it was part of everybody's experience. Just so happened that mine was visible. And so I found that to really be very beneficial for my mindset. And I felt more positive about myself. I also realized that the real handicaps that I was going to face in life were going to be self-imposed. It wasn't going to be about my hands or my legs. And I think that's true for most people. I really do. That what really holds us back in life, it's not what we can see. It's not these kind of challenges. It's the ones that we create for ourselves.
Yes, true enough. So back to this story, there was not a lot of hope that maybe you would even walk or run, was there at the beginning?
Right, no, not at all. And my parents made the decision, which I'm sure was incredibly difficult, to amputate the bottom part of my left leg. At that point, it was really, for the most part, useless. So, but that's a big decision to amputate the bottom part of somebody's left leg. But I'm so grateful that they did. And now the technology is so great with artificial legs. It's really amazing. But no, they're really, doctors really doubted how was I going to be able to take care of myself. How was I going to be able to walk and run and be like all the other kids? And so, sure, I mean, the future didn't look super bright. Let me just put it that way.
Yes. But you found yourself at the tennis club.
I did. Tennis really changed my life.
You were a ball boy.
I'll never forget. What was that?
You were a ball boy at the tennis club, weren't you? Weren't you gathering balls just for a bit of pocket money or something?
Well, actually, you have a very good memory, my friend. I started going over to the tennis court, and there was a community tennis club near home in California, and I would watch people play, and I just kind of fell in love with the game. And I really wanted to play, but I couldn't hold on to the racket. I used to hold the racket against my right elbow with my left hand. But I walked into a tennis store, and on the wall was what I believe was the holy grail of tennis rackets. I'm convinced this racket was made just for me. It was called a Wilson T2000. And for the tennis players that are watching, the head of the racket and then the grip between the head of the racket and the grip were two parallel bars. And my finger got stuck in the throat of the racket. That's how I learned how to hold it. And I knew we were going to be talking today. So I actually brought with me the tennis racket I'm playing with currently. This is a racket that Wilson Sporting Goods has actually made for me. It's the Roger Crawford autograph racket. Now,
for goodness,
it's a very limited market. Let me tell you, it's actually a regular racket that you would buy, but they've just put this piece here in the middle. And so I slip my right finger and then hold the grip to my right elbow with my left hand. So that's how I hit it. So I'm still playing. And,
Roger, we'll come back to the story, but you're actually sponsored and ranked, aren't you? You're sponsored by the Wilson Tennis.
I am. Wilson has been my sponsor for just a number of years, and just so grateful for their support. They've just been an amazing partner and have brought me in to speak at various tennis conferences around the country. I was a ranked player in California, and then I had a national ranking.
Wait. That's too fast. Go back.
Okay.
Your first grab of this racket and what you did. Did you go along to the tennis club and say, "Hey, look what I can do"? Or how did it happen? Tell us.
So here's what I learned. I knew I wasn't the fastest and I knew I wasn't the most powerful. But what I learned playing tennis was if you could hit the ball over the net one more time than the other person, you win the point.
Oh, I've said that so many times. I think quoting you.
So consistency on the tennis court is more important than perfection. I think that's true in life as well. I just kept the ball coming back. I was just a backboard. Now, I'd reach a certain level. There were players that were skilled enough that were able to pull me off the tennis court, would be able to beat me. But I reached a pretty high level of tennis just with that consistency.
But wait, you had one blooming leg.
Right. Well, I guess because I wore an artificial leg for such a long time. I mean, I had it since I was 5 years old. I adapted pretty well. In fact, I remember playing this gentleman one time, and throughout the entire match, I wore long warm-up pants. And he didn't realize until the match was over that I wore an artificial leg. I can tell you, he took the loss a lot harder than Colin.
You're a tart. Speaking
well, I'll tell you, having a physical challenge like mine, and I say this, was really an advantage in many ways, because my opponent, right, he would come out and he'd take a look at me and think, I better not lose to this dude. This guy's got one leg, he's got three fingers. Oh my gosh, if I lose, I'm going to quit. So there was automatically all this pressure on him, and I just kept that ball coming back. Just give him another opportunity to make a mistake. And so it was.
In all of this, you are one of the few people who's ever beaten John McEnroe.
Well, you're kind to say that. I actually didn't beat John McEnroe, but I'll tell you, I did get to play a few. I did get to hit a few balls with him, and what I say to audiences is that the other player that I hit some balls with was Serena Williams.
Oh,
and this was just recently. And I learned from that experience that a positive attitude doesn't work every time. That's what I learned. But no, John McEnroe was a far better tennis player than I was. But he was fortunate enough to play him when I was in the juniors. But my level of tennis was enough to play at the collegiate level. But then you get up to the that upper echelon. Those players are very, very good. I'm a huge fan, by the way, of Australian tennis players, and was able to meet one of my idols, which was the great Rod Laver. And he was one of the most gracious, sweet human beings I've ever met in my life.
Yep.
And I will tell you that there's a tennis racket that you can see behind me, and you can see a picture of Rod Laver, and he was so gracious to autograph that racket for me and send it to me. So that was when I was growing up, he was my idol.
Roger, this went on. Did you win a college scholarship for sport?
I did. I received a scholarship to Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, California, and I was there from 1978 to 1982. And it was just a tremendous experience to be able to play collegiate tennis, and met some lifelong friends along the way. I think just as importantly, it taught me a lot of lessons about life.
Yeah.
And that I was able then to apply in my career as a speaker and a writer. So I'm just very fortunate for the game of tennis.
So was adolescence tricky for you? I can only imagine it might have been. How did you get through your teen years?
Well, I think adolescence is challenging for everyone. For me, being different was challenging from the standpoint of wanting to fit in, wanting to be like all the other kids, having questions like, am I ever going to get married, ever going to have a family? I mean, there were a lot of questions that went through my mind. Sure, there were times that kids would bully me. And I look back at that experience, and I guess you would say in an odd way, I'm grateful for it, because it taught me that people that would ridicule you for how you look on the outside. They're actually revealing their handicap on the inside. There's something going on with them. And it was about them, not about me. So it taught me a very, very important lesson. But, I look back at my life, and Colin, here's the thing. I wouldn't change my hands or my legs. I really wouldn't. And it's interesting as I talk to people around the country and they share with me a little bit about their life. They often say the same thing about their challenges and hardships, that they wouldn't necessarily have chosen it, but now that they've gone through it, they feel like it's been beneficial, that they've learned something, that they've learned about their resiliency, their courage, their determination. And so I'm not saying that anybody would choose to begin life with hands and legs like mine. I totally get that. But in looking back and the experience that I've had, I wouldn't change it.
How did you get to be a speaker? Where did that all begin?
Well, being a accomplished speaker yourself, my friend, you understand the process of what it takes. I started speaking at schools, and I was speaking for free, and I would give 4 or 5 assemblies in a day. And I always say to people, if you want to learn how to be a speaker, speak to a group of students on Friday afternoon, the last period of the day. You'll learn how to speak fast.
I spoke at a school in Chicago, and I think it was year 8 and 9, and they were pretty rascally. And at the end of it, I said to the headmaster, "Sorry, that wasn't my best performance." He said, "I always say, if God loved teachers, he wouldn't have made year 8 and 9 students."
But I was speaking at schools and developed my craft as a speaker. And then slowly but surely, people would tell somebody about me, and they'd bring me into their company or association or college, universities. And so now here I am, 34 years later. I enjoy it as much as I ever have. I really do. COVID-19 has been a big obstacle, as you know, my friend. It's any live events have been postponed or canceled. And so I've been doing a lot of this, a lot of Zoom conferences. I'm looking forward to having those live events come back. But like, I've often said to people, and I know you and I talked about this earlier, I don't think we're going back to normal. I think normal's ahead of us, not behind us.
Yeah.
When we go through change, we don't usually go back to where we were before. We go forward to a different place. And I think this is going to happen with COVID-19. But wherever there's change, there's always opportunity and new possibilities. So, they call it the novel coronavirus because it's new and different, never been seen before. But we can be hopeful because change isn't new and challenges aren't new. We've gone through it before. We're going to go through it again. We'll get through this. We'll come out the other side. And I think in many ways be better for the experience.
Yes. I can only agree and hope that will be the same for everybody, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's every cloud has a silver lining, etc. It's been very tragic for many, or millions of people who've lost loved ones. I have a friend in Kentucky, and he's been blogging his experiences as he goes through. He's only 45. He's fit. He's a footy coach, but he's really suffered with this thing. And anybody who says it's a hoax, it's a fake news thing, well, they just need to talk to him and anybody else. It's been awful. Roger, what about telling us the little anecdote about the man who saw you with notes when you were about to
speak? Oh, right. So I'll never forget. I had, before I would speak, I would have all these notes, and I would, have them in a folder, and I was going through these notes, and this gentleman came up to me, and he took the notes from me and said, I don't think you need these. And I said, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. How will I remember my speech? And he said this to me. He said, Roger, the truth isn't hard to remember. And then he went on to explain to me that what audiences really want is they want your heart, they want authenticity, and they don't want a memorized, necessarily rehearsed. It's not that you should prepare, but they want something that has from the heart, that is authentic. And that really changed how I approached my presentations. That everyone's a little bit different, and it's a conversation with the audience. And I might change direction. As you know, my friend, you're a master, a communicator. You've done this for years and years. And so,
Roger, please.
but it really did change. And the other thing that I've learned as a speaker is that I've had often times someone has approached me and said, Roger, my favorite part of your presentation is when you said this, and they'll share this quote with me, and I'll think, that doesn't seem familiar. I'll go back, I'll listen to the tape or watch the video, and sure enough, I didn't say it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, Roger, that's because what you say is not nearly as important as what the audience hears.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's really profound, because it's not about me, it's what they hear.
Mm.
Because maybe I'm going to share an idea, a concept, and they're going to take it in and they're going to kind of rework it in their mind so it applies to their life. So it's not about me, it's about them.
Years and years and years ago, I was at a preaching class. One of the old geezers who was very experienced came and said to us, preaching, and I guess for us, conference speaking, is truth through personality. And it's truths that are embedded in the tales that enter into lowly doors. And sometimes we don't see them sneak in alongside us because, just as you say, people hear what they hear. And that's a beautiful and positive message. What would be your most exciting speaking event? Can you think of one or two of those that's really stood out for you?
Oh, there's been so many. I remember speaking to 50,000 people in Charlotte, North Carolina, at a large multi-level marketing convention. That was really, really exciting.
50,000.
Interesting. Every one of the audiences that I speak to, I find is exciting, because people have asked me this: isn't it stressful traveling around and speaking? You're on and off airplanes, staying in different hotels. And I always say to that question, the answer is stress is a blank calendar. It's when no one asks you to speak. That's a lot more stressful than hopping on an airplane and traveling and staying in different hotels every night. The point is that I realize people are spending valuable time out of their life to listen to me. So I really owe it to them to give them 100%, to be present and to be able to give them the best that I have. So I really cherish each and every opportunity, as I know you do. And it's a great privilege, and one that I don't take for granted.
Now, you're worried about whether you would ever get married. And so we've got to hear about your family because, those kids, your wife, it's a beautiful thing. So tell us about your family.
So I'm married to my wife, Catherine. We were high school sweethearts. I always tell people, but she didn't know it. We both had gone through being married and unfortunately being divorced, but then we found each other, and so we have 4 kids between us and 3 grandchildren, and life is great. Life is great. Blessed beyond belief, truly, and love being a grandpa. The grandchildren call me Pop Daddy.
Pop Daddy.
Pop Daddy, yeah. So, and I love being a grandparent, and love being a parent. And so I'm about to turn 60 years old, and life is good. I have so much to be grateful for. My goodness.
And you can still play Serena Williams at tennis.
Yeah, I can still knock it around a little bit. So, but it's great. I want to tell you, I know you have a lot of viewers in Australia. I've been down to your beautiful country a few times, and just Such an amazing, amazing place to live with the most wonderful people, kind-hearted, and I just love the spirit of Australia. I really
Well,
do.
that's a beautiful thing to say. And I know that audiences love you. What's the message you try to leave with every audience? Well, I don't say try, you do. Do or do not. There is no try. Uh, what do you leave?
Well, certainly it would depend upon the group, but I guess overall message would be this: the challenges in life are inevitable, but defeat is optional. The single best predictor, I believe, of success is our mindset, because we very rarely, if ever, perform better than we believe we can. In other words, what we believe is impossible in life, that becomes our ceiling, right? That's as high as we're going to go. What do we believe is possible? Because whether we believe we can do something or we believe we can't do something, we're going to work really hard to prove ourselves right.
Wow.
So what I try to encourage people to do is to take a look at their mindset, see if there's some areas that they might shift their mindset a bit, shift their perspective, because in shifting your perspective, it's going to change your results. The better that you choose to think, the better results you get. And it's easy to lose sight of that. Now, it's just not about thinking about it. You have to do something about it. But the foundation, I believe, is the way we think. So that would be the overall message.
Yeah, I still think, I'm not contradicting that in any way. I'm adding to it by saying the strongest message I ever learned from you is that you were somewhat fortunate because all your handicaps were on the outside and
That's right.
you can see them. And pity help the rest of us who can't see our handicaps because they're well and truly inside and in our minds. And what we expect of ourselves is probably the greatest handicap, isn't it?
I would say, and
Well, not expecting enough is our greatest handicap.
right, and I thank you for sharing that, because oftentimes it's the invisible challenges in life that are infinitely more difficult to overcome. I mean, we think about scars in life. I got a lot of scars on my hands and my legs, but I got to tell you, it's the scars you can't see that have been the most painful. And I think that's true for all of us. I really, really do. And when audiences hear me, I want them to understand that my life's not different than their life. I think the experiences that we have are very similar. But hopefully there is something I can share with them, because maybe I have a little different perspective on challenges or change that can be of benefit to them, that can inspire them, that can uplift them. That to me is the greatest privilege I have.
I've got two boxes you've ticked, Roger, and one is the story and the other is this belief. And you know that the Academy motto is you are 10 times better than you think. And what Steve Martin always says when people say, how do you be a star? He says, be so good, they can't ignore you. And you are the living example of being so good, they can't ignore you. I mean, being sponsored by Wilson, playing all over the place, getting ranked and scholarships. And that is fantastic. You have been and are so good. People cannot ignore you. Would you like to reflect on that for a moment? I know it's a bit of a surprise question to pop out at you, but just the idea of being so good, they can't ignore you.
Well, I think that that's a great quote. And I love that. I love that concept, because I think it's true. And it's also being the best version of yourself. Be the best version of you. There were times in my life that I wanted to be like everybody else, wanted to have normal hands, so I got artificial hands.
Oh, really?
Felt like I was wearing a mask.
I remember that.
Felt like I was wearing a mask. So the message for people is this: don't spend a whole lot of time trying to be somebody else. Just be you. Be the best version of yourself. You have a unique skill set that no one else has. When you combine that with a positive mindset, wow, think of the possibilities that open up. But it's so easy, isn't it, to focus in on what we believe we don't have or what we lack, instead of what we have and our giftedness.
Do you agree with me? Or it's just a figure I pulled out of the air that we are 10 times better than we think. We're probably, one bloke said to me once, if you were half as good as you think you are, you'd be twice as good as you are. And I never understood that. Probably said it the wrong way around. Do you think we are better than we present ourselves? Is there something deep inside us that's screaming to get out?
Well, I think so. Yes, I believe that. I think that all of us have unrealized potential, no doubt. I think it's up to us to decide, what does success look like for us? What is a life well lived for us? And you're the only one that can make that decision. I mean, some people think it's prominence, but I look at prominence this way: it's all about us. I personally think true success is significance, and significance is about others. And someone asked me this question: what are you written on your tombstone? And I thought about it. Here it is: I'd rather be speaking. That's what I want on mine. But if I thought about it,
Spike Milligan said he wanted on his. I told you I was sick.
I told you I was sick. I was talking to a neighbor of mine. He said something funny. He said, "You know what I want on my tombstone?" And I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "That dude was really old. I mean, old." I thought, that's great. But, you know, when it's all said and done, you hope that you make a little bit of a difference, that you have impact. It's not about prominence. In my opinion, it's about significance.
Good on you. You've been writing. How many books do you have?
4 books, and my books are, doing pretty well, and still continuing to write.
What are they called? Where can we get them?
You can get them on my website, which is rogercrawford.com, ROGER, Crawford.com.
That's Crawford, by the way, not Crawford.
Yeah, that's right.
Speak English, mate.
I'll tell you funny, for those that are listening that are tennis players, when I was in Australia the first time, someone was asking me, they talking about tennis, and they said, "Well, fair dink 'em." And I said, No, I don't dink 'em. I like to just hit them hard. And they said, no, not dink 'em in tennis. And then they explained to me.
You're terrible. We didn't mean it. What did I ask you? I think I said the books.
About my books.
You get them, Roger Crawford. What are they called?
So I have a book called How High Can You Bounce? I have a book called Playing from the Heart, Think Again, and then also a book called Think to Win.
Beautiful. Where is this going? You said you're about 60.
Yes.
Do you expect to be like me? I wanted to one day die laughing on the stage and have everybody wonder when I was going to get up, and then realize that it was for real. I hope we can get people to go out laughing. That would be a wonderful thing. But
yes, it would.
Where does it go for you? Do you think in those terms much?
Well, I think in terms of wanting to continue to do what I'm doing as long as I can. I had a dear friend of mine who recently passed away. His name was Art Holst. And Art Holst was speaking into his mid-90s.
Oh.
Colin, he had, I think, one of the most beautiful, inspiring opening lines I've ever heard. It went like this: I am 94 years old. This was 94. I'm 94 years old. You're probably wondering why you should listen to me. He said, well, I've been young. You hadn't been old.
Yep. True enough.
That was beautiful.
Yes.
So I hope that I can share that as long as I can. I mean, I feel terrific, feel great. I'd love to continue to do this as long as I can. I'm not sure that I want to be on the road as much as I was when I was younger, because I have family obligations now, and I did back then as well, but it was sort of a different period in life.
Yeah.
But I want to stay as busy as I can. I mean,
Corona might have done you a favor by presenting us with more opportunities to do this kind of thing. instead of having to do all that traveling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we close, tell us about tying up your shoes.
So tying my shoes was, that was perhaps the biggest obstacle to independence for me. I mean, I could do everything else, but tying my shoes was a big obstacle. So I would ask friends to do it for me, but I would always make sure that we were out of sight. I didn't want other kids seeing that a friend was tying my shoes. So I finally learned how to do it, how to tie my shoes when I was 16 years of age. And I always say to people that I learned how to tie my shoes the next day they invented Velcro. Where was that when I was growing up, right? But I cherish tying my shoes. I love tying my shoes. And a day doesn't go by that I don't think about it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I have got lazy and I'd leave mine done up and use a shoehorn to get them on back to the same fit they were. But my gardening boots are different. And every time I tie them up, I think of you and you say, and then they invented Velcro.
That's right.
I think, oh dear, what an achievement. Roger, I could talk to you for another hour and a half, but we are restricted. People are on their way to work. They're listening on the train and in the car and at home, and somebody's telling them that their evening meal is ready. So we'd better close. Thank you. Roger Crawford at rogercrawford.com or rogercrawford.com.
Yeah.
And you're a gentleman and a scholar. Your wife's a lady and your children are blessed to have you. And so are we. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Be So Good with Colin Pearce. For more episodes, check the playlist at colinpearce.com/podcast. And don't forget to drop a review in the iTunes listing.